Welcome to the Wisconsin Wellness Podcast. I'm Lori Groh, your host, mental health therapist, and practice owner. Each month, we'll showcase a central theme and provide weekly practical hacks, inspiring interviews, and valuable advice from wellness professionals. Our aim is to help you streamline your wellness and mental health journey. So let's start the show. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Wisconsin Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Lori Groh. I'm a therapist, owner of Shoreside Therapies, wife, mom of four, and yes, proud dog owner. Today's episode is a little different. We're sharing part one of a live workshop I hosted about one of my favorite topics, boundaries. If you've ever found yourself saying yes when you meant no, or you're constantly carrying the emotional weight of everyone else's stuff, this one's for you. I'm joined by Julia Frank, an intern at Shoreside Therapies, and we're breaking down the basics of what boundaries are, how they show up in daily life, and why they're so easy to lose, especially in the bathroom if you're a parent. Just trust me on that one. Grab a notebook if you can, or just take this as a chance to breathe and reflect. Let's dive in. This is one of my favorite topics and one of the things I think I myself have to come back to quite often, and I think all of us really should make it a practice to consider where our boundaries are and where we need more work, where we need more flexibility, and where we need to tighten up those boundaries. Before I do any workshop, I like to, if you are by your computer, obviously if you're driving, then don't do this exercise. But if you are at your computer, I want you to take a minute and just write down some of the things that are coming up for you in this moment, whether it's your to-do list, just things that are circling around your brain. We have a lot of information coming at us constantly. So in order for you to feel like, okay, I'm present today and I'm going to get the most out of it, putting all that stuff aside can be really helpful. And we're also learning an internal boundary by doing that. All of this stuff is for later. And right now, in this moment, this time is for you. So each and every time you can do that, you're going to be working that muscle of creating a boundary. So some of us might not be able to do a lot of environmental boundaries. Like, I know as a parent, that was always a fun one when they were little. Of this boundary of a bathroom should be a pretty clear boundary, but as a parent, it might not happen. So some of us might not be able to do that externally. So being able to do some of those internal boundary settings can be really useful. And one thing you can also do is if you are noticing those things coming up throughout our time, write them down. Again, it's going to be a practice because, again, we have so much stuff coming at us. So today we'll be doing just the basics, right? So what are boundaries? What are the benefits of having good boundaries, setting boundaries, and then maintaining boundaries? That's where a lot of us do get stuck. And that's where additional support can be really helpful. We might be able to say internally, these are my boundaries, but setting them up can be really challenging, and also maintaining them can be really challenging. But one of the things as we start talking, you'll realize that you might not always have the right words for those boundaries. And so having something concrete that you can do can be really helpful when you're learning the practice. All right. So what are emotional boundaries? I like to start this with this piece of information just because we need to all be on the same page for what boundaries are. I'm sure all of you have seen too, there's so much information on social media on boundaries and how to set them. And it can be a bit confusing and sometimes a little bit harsher than we might want to. So basically I would categorize boundaries in two ways. One are those automatic boundaries that we have, which we don't really have to think about. I mentioned the bathroom with little ones, right? I don't have to think too much about closing the door for my boundary to go to the bathroom. I'm sure there's many other ones that we all have that we don't even have to think about. what are some of those automatic boundaries that you set or that you don't have to think about that are just there? For instance, friends not calling me past 10 o'clock. That's not even something that I have verbally said to anyone, but they just know. Number one, I'm not going to answer. Number two, that they're not going to get my best self. And number three, that I will probably be in bed, hopefully sleeping, maybe helping kids with homework. Julia, do you have any that you can think of, some automatic boundaries that you might already have in place?
Yeah, one I really started doing with like grad school specifically, because I'm in class pretty late. Once I get home from class, I don't do any schoolwork. That's been like a big thing for me. I try and do it all during the day because if I'm at class all day, I'm at work all day, it's just too much to get home at 7 o'clock and have to do, dinner and laundry and all that stuff and then have work on top of it. So that's something I really started doing recently.
Yeah. I love that boundary. I like that too, because you're giving that distinction of I'm at home, I'm going to rest.
Yeah, for sure.
Claire, I love yours too. You have do not disturb on your phone. That's one I have also, and I have it on, if I'm with clients, but I also think too, if I'm home and something comes up for work, I want to kind of set that stage that I'm not going to be available just open-ended. So that really helps my family too, to know that there are limits there and that I'm here for them. Obviously, that can't be all the time. There are things that come up, but having the do not disturb can be a really great feature. The other thing, if you're concerned about having do not disturb and you have kids and you think, okay, what if there's an emergency? You can go in the settings and put in, if somebody calls you twice, then it'll go through. So that's just an extra, I guess, hack on how to keep those boundaries, but still allow for emergencies. See, even Apple knows that we need boundaries and knows we have some emergencies. All right. Any other automatic ones when you're thinking about those boundaries? Oh, this is one I don't think about, but it's clear to everybody in my home if I have my headphones on. So the rule in our house is if I have my headphones on and I'm doing a chore, you can totally come and interrupt me. You got to help with the chore or let me enjoy the chore. Oh, I love that one too, James, standing too close to others in waiting lines. That is a great example. And one of those things I would want everybody to just pay attention to on their physical boundaries, because it's also different for different people. But we've also had, I'm sure almost everybody has had that experience where somebody's talking too close to them. And you won't actually think about backing up, but you will back up. Especially if they just had coffee, you'll back up maybe even more. But yeah, I do love that of the physical ones. All right. Plug into my computer. My family knows when I'm working hard then. Yes, I love that. Sometimes it's going into another room. Sometimes saying to people, if I have my computer out, that's not automatic, but a lot of people would sense that that's what's going on. Speaking of headphones, people use that too if they're out in public and they don't really want to be disturbed. Maybe they're taking a subway somewhere. Maybe they're on the bus. Maybe they're at the grocery store. Also, pretty good signal for most people that I'm listening to something I don't want to be disturbed, right? You could probably list a million of those. What can be tricky is that we have a lot that we aren't really necessarily paying attention to, and other people have a lot that they're not necessarily paying attention to, and they're not going to be the same. So when we go into constructing some, keep that in mind too. Other people have these automatic boundaries. We might not know them. For instance, it might be, I had somebody at one point say their rule was don't call before 7 a.m., but nobody actually knew that. And so if that would happen, it became a really big issue. So that was that person's automatic boundary where they're not thinking about it. Somebody else crosses it. The first thing that person would be thinking is, they just crossed my boundary. That's so rude, right? And all of those things we might say about it. Question I always ask is, did I let them know? Because we might think something's common sense, but everybody grows up different. Everybody has different backgrounds. Everybody has different cultures, right? And different rules. So, all right. Boundaries shift depending on the situation. This is one of my favorite ones just to acknowledge, because we might have boundaries for our close friends, and those would differ from work. Julia knows me pretty well so far, right? Where I'm very casual at work, but I'm not also hugging everybody. When I walk into the office, I will do that with my kids. I will do that with my friends, but I will engage totally different with that physical boundary. So I want you to think a bit about what are those differences of boundaries. So it might be a family, might be different, might be friends are different, might be work, and might be school. Julie, I'm putting you on the spot. Any ones you can think of that would shift or be different in a school setting versus home or family?
Yeah, one right off the bat is that, like, I tell my family and friends that I love them all the time. That's not really something you go and tell, like, peers at school or coworkers or anyone that you're in a professional relationship with. You might tell them that you appreciate them or you like spending time with them, but you don't always tell them that you love them.
Yes, so true. And have any of you almost automatically done that when you're done on a phone call? I caught myself several times because I'm just used to it. Or I was talking to my mom earlier, and then talking to a coworker. I'm like, they can probably hear the and then nothing. Great example. But that just should help you also just to know when you are putting those boundaries, those can shift, and it can shift on timing of your life. It can shift on work environments. They are not necessarily in stone for the rest of your life. I also think that can help too when you're setting them, because the process should also be flexible. All right, I'm going to go over those benefits. Feel free to chime in if you can think of any other benefits. But people that start to use some of these boundaries, I see this with clients a lot. They will have all these benefits that they weren't really necessarily anticipating. One being increased self-esteem, because when they're setting those boundaries, they're realizing themselves, they're teaching themselves, I'm worth it. I'm putting this boundary because I need to take care of myself. You're getting that. Then that other person is respecting it. And a lot of times they will accept that boundary and it won't be a big deal and you'll feel really good. It's not all the time, but it can help as you're setting them to set those smaller ones with people that you trust and feel like they would be better at hearing some of those at first. But that can make you feel just better and have that higher self-esteem. Improved relationships. Again, what tends to happen is a little bit of bumps in the road at first, but individuals that you have relationships with will start to feel more clear with your relationship, and they will actually feel better. That's why a lot of times when we talk about boundaries for kids, they give pushback, but actually they really desire them. It makes them feel so safe if they know if they do X, Y, and Z, this is what is going to happen. For instance, oh, Mom, I have a project that's due tomorrow and it's going to take us 7 hours, right? Okay. It's possible I might be flexible that first time and say, that's possible. But knowing if I do that to Mom, she's going to say, I'm sorry, I can help you for an hour and the rest is up to you. They're going to feel a lot better knowing, hey, I got to do this ahead of time. And then again, they're learning some things from that. It's a little different with kids, but same idea. And same with friendships. If you get that 10 p.m. call and you answer it and you don't want to answer it, but you didn't set that boundary or for whatever reason, your friend might, I can sense a tone, but I don't know what it is. And so you might get questions like, are you mad at me? Right? So this helps also to clarify. If you say, hey, I don't like calls after 10 because I'm sleepy, and they know that, oh, okay, well, I can do that. I don't need to do the 10 p.m. calls anymore. But it helps their anxiety too. So for those of us that might struggle with setting boundaries because we caretake, I know that I put myself in that category. The boundaries are actually a way to caretake. You're reducing someone else's boundaries. I mean, reducing someone else's anxiety, and they know what to expect and you know what to expect. You know that feeling when you meet someone and within 5 minutes, you just know you could talk to them for hours? Actually, that's one of my hiring requirements at Shoreside Therapies. All of our therapists are highly educated, experienced, specialized in all sorts of different areas. But the real test is, can I imagine sitting with them for an awkwardly long road trip? As a self-proclaimed awkward introvert myself, I've realized how important this is. Finding the therapist isn't just about credentials. It's about feeling comfortable enough to show up as yourself. The good, the bad, the I just cried watching a dog commercial version of you. And that's why I'm so picky about who joins our team. The best part? Our biggest referral source is our own clients. So that means people aren't just getting the support they need. They love their therapist so much, they send their friends, family, and even their dog walker to us. So if you're looking for a therapist who not only knows their stuff, but also feels like a real person, then check us out. Shoreside Therapies, where therapy is real, human, and maybe even a little fun. Yes, it can be fun sometimes. All right, reduced resentment. This comes up a lot of times with couples in particular, or family members, where they might be feeling resentment. One of the things I always ask when someone's feeling resentment is, have you been clear in how you've explained what you need? Because resentment tends to be built on a couple of things. One is repeated boundary crossing, but the other can be jealousy is not quite the word. It's more of an envy. So in relationships, resentment would occur sometimes when someone might, their partner, for instance, might go out every Friday night and they're home with the kids. And they might feel that resentment because they have envy with it. You get to do this, or you have a break. I don't, right? So paying attention to where resentment is can also be really helpful, because a lot of times it's telling us we have a boundary that's being crossed, or I need something. Both of those are really key pieces of information. Side note, I talk with another therapist and she focuses a lot on this, about 20-minute long podcast on the Wisconsin wellness. But it's a great episode and she goes over resentment, which is really cool. So going through that can be really useful. Increase emotional well-being. The inner peace that you have when you set those boundaries can be huge. People will notice this a lot more when they're thinking about work boundaries. But again, it can be family boundaries as well. If somebody's having that boundary in place with a parent, for instance, like, Mom, don't call me at work. These are my hours I'm available. There's going to be peace. You might not even know that that's going to feel like that until you actually do it. And your whole body can feel such a relief. We went over a situation in consults where somebody had to put up a boundary of contact. Right after she did that, peace. Because she put that in place and knew this is what the plan is if that's ever interrupted. We need, again, more peace than ever right now, because a lot of things are coming at us without our consent. So reduce stress, right? Again, that same thing. The overcommitment, that's one that comes up for me because I like to do a lot of things and I like to be a part of a lot of things. But looking at what are those things that you might not actually feel like is important or valuable to you, that prevents you from the overcommitting. We'll talk to you on some specific ways on what to do with that. Increase productivity. This is where a lot of people will do blocks of time. I do this one as well. Julie, I don't know if this is something you do, but I have days of the week where I have specific things, and it might not be boundaries, relational boundaries as much, although that's in it. It's boundaries of Mondays are my day to catch up on things and make everything's in order for work, for home, all of that, right? And so I don't usually have appointments on Mondays, even doctor's appointments for kids' family. I maintain that as much as humanly possible. Again, what it does is it allows me to focus better, get more things done when I know Tuesdays I'm doing this and I'm going to work doing a ton of paperwork, right? Or social media, whatever it is I'm doing, helps me be more efficient and effective. All right. So I'm going to go through self-awareness is part of this too. Understanding those feelings, like I mentioned, that we have is going to help us so that each and every day, which would be the goal, each and every day, our life becomes more and more ours. That's what the boundaries can do. Poor boundaries, anyone think of some of those negative things with having poor boundaries that you notice? Kind of a little bit of that reverse of what are the benefits of it. Julia, do you notice anything? Do you notice you might not have one in a certain area?
I think for a lot of times, the not having strong boundaries perpetuates people pleasing and the need to make other people feel more comfortable or to take on that responsibility that isn't always yours to take. I think those are really intertwined.
Yeah, so true.
Yeah,
they do. And taking advantage of our kindness. And a lot of times it's the ones that are caring more that tend to struggle with it because we have a little bit more empathy maybe. We might be wanting to care for people and that might be in our role. A lot of times people in the mental health field, people in the health field in general tend to have this come up. That's a huge one because of the emotional weight of other people's problems. It's also why for therapists, we have those boundaries because it is needed because that might be what we're doing. And so if we don't have those concrete boundaries, that seeps in. Anyone in the health field, that could happen. I'm going to have you all kind of go through and look at these boundaries. So checklist on the poor boundaries. I prioritize the needs of others over my own. I agree with others out of avoiding that. We want to avoid that fear of being rejected. I often say yes to things I don't genuinely want to do. Say no is a challenge for me. Tolerate mistreatment from others. I frequently try to solve other people's problems. I rely heavily on the opinions of others. I frequently sacrifice my own needs to comply with others. I tend to share excessive personal information. Disappointing others is something I try to avoid. I often assume the role of caregivers in relationships. Seeking the approval of others is an important aspect of my self-worth. Resentment builds up when my efforts are not reciprocated. This is another big one that pops up for people. Feel free to share any of those ones that come up for you. You can also, that's okay to keep them to yourself too, but I do find that makes a difference when we're not alone in this. One for me is I might comply more with others. So that one I tend to do, I might sacrifice myself. So, I'm not going to go on this walk because X, Y, and Z. Yoga is one of those things I try to do every night, and it's just for 10 minutes, and I do it 9:00 at night. But I will tell you that is one that my kids are usually really good about. But if they have homework, it's one of those things. If they have something, I'm like, okay, 4 kids, I'm all day long doing homework. Guess what? That 9:00 might not happen. So with that particular one, if that's crossed for myself, I will remind everyone that next day, hey, remember what happened? You guys know mom loves yoga, right? We're all going to work hard. So mom is kinder and nicer. And the kids like to be kind of a part of that too. But all right, 10 reasons that we might have these poor boundaries. I really want you to pay attention to what might actually be occurring for us. Fear of rejection or abandonment. And this might not be this complete fear where we think this person's totally going to leave us, but it might be in this moment, they're going to leave me. In this moment, they're going to feel distant from me or want to pull back or, even a response like that. That's a small rejection, right? So what can also be helpful with that particular one, Brené Brown talks about this, is counting. So if we count to 10, can pick a number, that emotion that we feel after we set that boundary and we're uncomfortable, We can move through it. Doesn't last usually very long. Lasts about 10 seconds. Tops 30 seconds. It can feel like 17 hours in the moment, but it really isn't. Low self-esteem, lack of self-worth, that can be a reason. Prioritizing others' needs, right? Being used to being in a caretaking position. That can be something from childhood a lot of times. If you're the oldest and you took care of younger kids, that might be something. I am the youngest, so I didn't have that, but I'm the only girl. And there's that social stuff of, your girl, help them, right? So there's certain things that we might notice from childhood. Difficulty in saying no to others can be the practice of it. We might notice that there's some cultural things with that as well. Traumatic experiences leading to emotional vulnerability. So thinking about, did I have some experiences that actually made me physically or emotionally really scared to do that? Would a parent or somebody I love completely leave me in that moment if I said no or said I'm not doing that, right? Fear of conflict. This is a big one with relationships. I'm a couples counselor and this comes up quite a bit. I will say, just a side note, when I work with couples when both people have difficulty with conflict and confronting each other, the intimacy tends to be much lower and they feel less connected. So just a side note on that there is a benefit in that conflict or confronting. Unhealthy relationship dynamics learned in childhood, inability to recognize personal limits and needs. Another huge one that comes up is we sometimes don't actually know what we need. This tends to happen more so with individuals that were caretakers growing up. It happens more often if in their family dynamic, a sibling maybe had more needs, physical, mental health needs, learning disabilities. The sibling tends to have difficulties knowing what their own needs are. Could be a whole separate workshop on that, but you might notice that that's one of the causes, codependent tendencies and seeking external validation. I'm going to use Taylor Swift in this because I watched that documentary and one of the things she talked about was praise being something that was really challenging to not get. And back in the day when basically people were saying this and that about her, she wasn't used to it. And that became extremely difficult for her because her whole life was really about getting that external validation. You're doing a good job. Good job. This is amazing, right? You can get really used to it and tied to it versus our own validation because it's harder to tell when we're doing it on our own. Lack of understanding about the importance. All right. Anyone want to put anything in the chat? Feel free. This might be a little bit more personal, but I can put in there for me that learning from childhood, right? My brothers would say, go get me this. Okay, I'll go get you that. I'll put down whatever I'm doing. And I will tell you that's so learned that, again, my kids will ask me to get them something. And I'm a nice person. I'll get you something. That I get that. That's part of just being a nice person. But I will sometimes have to catch myself that I'm also sitting down with you. Why am I getting that pencil for you? And I'm 40 years older than you. Get up, But it is so learned and so automatic that I do also suggest paying attention to, some of those things you might just do automatically. Rejection is real. Yep. 100%. People might leave that relationship. When you are making boundaries, really important to check in. What are those consequences? Again, it's really good to talk to a therapist about it because it can definitely help with those real things that can occur. A friend can say, I'm not doing this. I liked it when you were giving me money all the time. That was great. And now you're not doing it anymore. It might not actually be about the money. It might be that it also is really hard for somebody to change how they interact with you. So I also just want to put that out there. We might, when something like that happens, say, oh, it's them, they're jerks, or it's me, I'm a jerk. You can go in a different route if you want to. You can go in that they're not used to this. They're not used to the new me and they might not ever get used to it. But now I know I'm keeping myself safe. And I have more space in my life now to find some friends that will be able to uphold those boundaries. All right. Rigid boundaries. This is one where I think sometimes social media does a disservice, because a lot of times when they're talking about boundaries on social media, they tend to be really rigid. And people will sometimes get caught up in it and not understand that boundary can work for some people in certain circumstances, but it might not actually work for you. I think there's a lot of great messages out there, and you'll start to find what messages resonate with you. But just be mindful of that usually when we're looking at information and tidbits, we're not necessarily putting all the context together. So, but these are sometimes when it might be more rigid. So I value my privacy and tend to keep to myself. I'm cautious about letting others get too close for fear potentially of rejection. Considering others' feelings is not always my first instinct. Sometimes I expect reciprocity when I extend help or support. And that can be to, let's say somebody's always 20 minutes early. There might be an expectation that that's across the board. I maintain a certain amount of emotional distance from people. Expressing my emotions can be challenging for me. I prefer to rely on myself rather than seeking help from others. Asking for assistance is something I find difficult to do. I experience frustration when things don't go as planned. Trusting others is a struggle. My circle of close relationships is relatively small. Tend to be wary of other people, new people, and their intentions. When things don't go the way I prefer, I might be critical of others. Take a moment, see if any of those resonate with you. And you don't have to be black or white, meaning I'm too flexible with my boundaries or I'm too rigid with my boundaries. There might be some that you're more flexible or too flexible, and some that you might be rigid for. I'm a very independent person, so asking for assistance is one that's an ongoing point of progress for me.
The same for me too.
Yeah. It's also very interesting because that tends to be one when we might notice that we're helpers.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's sort of like this double bind that can occur, meaning we can offer help in abundance, but taking it can be really hard. And then also we might feel resentful when people aren't offering it to us in the same way, or maybe not necessarily knowing it. You know, when so-and-so was sick, I reached out to them. I brought them soup. I took care of them. I took them to treatments, all of those things. Let's say I'm now sick and I would like some of that, and no one's doing it, right? One might not ask for it.
Yeah.
And then also feel really sad and disconnected that nobody is offering it because you might have done that for them.
Yeah.
Right? So one of those things with the boundaries, which can be really challenging, is letting go of that idea of people should kind of know.
Yeah.
So that's a hard one. I know for me, that's one I see in couples a ton too. My partner should know this already.
Yeah.
They should know it, right? So notice those things. And that, again, when you're going through this, and hopefully if you have some notes, you can circle back to some of those things you can notice. So these are the reasons why we might have those rigid ones: fear of vulnerability, of emotional intimacy. If we are really rigid in some of these boundaries, or critical, this is one that can go with the critical piece. If we are critical, we don't have to be vulnerable. So if somebody doesn't take out the trash, we can say, never take out the trash and you're lazy, right? Or get it together, just take out the trash. It's clearly ready to go. Now, most people won't use this in this instance of vulnerability, but saying, I really feel taken care of when you take out the trash. I do, and that is true for a lot of people. Or the dishes. I feel like such relief when I know I can count on you for that, right? So hard to do versus saying, you're an adult, take out the trash, right? Or whatever. So just pay attention to that. Past experience of betrayal or emotional hurt, desire to maintain a sense of control in relationships, overemphasize independence and self-reliance. That can also be a trauma response. I can only depend on myself. Deep-seated fear of being taken advantage of, right? That's something that can come up. So we try really hard to have more rigid boundaries, emotional detachment, or difficulties in expressing feelings. That's going to be important if you're trying to be less rigid, to know what you're actually feeling, because people can understand and do things differently if they know that. If you don't know what you're feeling, you might not know what you actually need or want. Feelings is a good one to come back to, too, at some other point, of the differences in sharing those feelings at work versus home versus friends and families. You can still use feeling words at work, but you might not say, "This is breaking my heart," or "I'm so sad that you forgot to email me." You might say, "I'm disappointed," right? So sometimes it's a wording thing. Strict adherence to personal rules or principles. Need to protect oneself from harm or disappointment. Learned behavior from upbringing. So our environment has a lot to do with that. Belief that vulnerability equates weaknesses or inferiority. And that wraps up part 1 of our boundaries workshop. I hope something clicked for you. Maybe you spotted one of your own automatic boundaries or realized, wait, I can actually say no. In the next episode, we're going to get into the hard stuff, setting boundaries without guilt, spotting when your boundaries are too rigid, and how to change your beliefs so you can finally stop people pleasing and start prioritizing you. And if you're craving more support, Julia is taking clients on a sliding scale at Shoreside Therapies. I'll be with her for the first few sessions to help ease you in, and you can find her information in the show notes. Thanks for hanging out with me today. See you in part 2. Quick favor, subscribe and rate the podcast to help us bring you more expert guests, transformative conversations, and valuable resources. Your support makes all the difference. And don't miss out. Big things are happening. Join the Mindful Advocacy Book Club, kicking off April 17th at 12 p.m. CST. Our first book, Hope in Darkness, is free on Amazon right now. Go ahead and click that link in the show notes. Plus, you get access to exclusive live wellness webinars to grow, learn, and connect. Sign up for our newsletter or visit Wisconsin Wellness Podcast to register. Until next time, stay well, Wisconsin.